Hello and welcome to Breast Friends Cancer Support Network. My name is Michelle Beck. I'm a two-time, almost 10-year survivor of breast cancer. I am the patient programs assistant at Breast Friends of Oregon. And when I have time, I write at my blog and on social media. You can find me at I Never Liked Pink. So today I'm super excited for this fabulous guest that I have. Her book that I just finished reading is, the short title is You Are Enough. And in it, she talks about her career because she is a strong black badass boss bitch, and her name is Charlene Wheeless. And the book literally has so many life lessons in it from cancer, but also career as a woman, and just really ways to empower yourself and move forward, because there are challenges in life aside from cancer that are just not easy. And she talks about so many of them in her book. And I'm so thrilled to have her here today. So let's kind of get into a little bit better bio. So Charlene is a business executive who has broken so many glass ceilings. She's a leadership coach, a speaker, author, cancer survivor, mom of 2 adult daughters, and I just love her. But we're going to talk about all of this today and her book, You Are Enough, which is reclaiming your career and your life with purpose, passion, and unapologetic authenticity is the full title. So Charlene, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Well, I appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, the non-cancer stuff, because we'll get there.
Oh gosh, where do I start? Well, I'm a recovering C-suite executive, as I like to say, since after my cancer journey, as we call them, I guess. I did leave corporate America, and I, of course, wrote the book. And then I found myself doing a lot of public speaking, and also decided to become a leadership coach. Which has been really gratifying. You know, in my free time, I like to reach out to other cancer survivors. I really call us all cancer warriors, because I know it's a lot of survivors who are no longer here on that. And you know, I hang out with my kids when they let me. They're 26 and 28, and my dogs as well. I have 2 dogs that are 15 and 16. Everybody's old in my life, I guess. And
Not you, you're like 20. So
yeah, I stopped aging. I sleep in a bariatric chamber, you know, the whole thing. But, you know, I spend my time trying to make my life and others the best it can be.
well, I love that. And definitely I learned so much from your book, and just about real simple lessons, and about being your own advocate and standing up for yourself. Because if you don't, there's a lot of people who will not help you. And, you know, not everyone has champions, because if they're not champions, they might be squashing you down. And
Absolutely.
that's one of the things you talk about in your book. So now let's briefly get to our cancer diagnosis and trek. Because you had quite the
Sure.
journey, if you could tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was in 2017. I was at the height of my career. I was the chief communications officer for a $40 billion multinational company, flying all over the place, having a great time. I'd reached the proverbial top, as they say. And a couple of months later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I thought, well, okay, I guess whatever this means. And I treated it like a project, right? I said to my doctor, okay, what's the process? How long? How can I plan? And, you know, and I should have known it was a little bit more serious than I was taking it initially, because she said to me, Charlene, I know your lifestyle and your work, and your treatment, your active treatment will be 7 months, and you need to not work during that time, because I don't think you'll make it if you do. You know, and I thought, okay, well, you're using a lot of hyperbole here.
Yeah,
And she
you're
said,
just trying to, you know,
right, right.
make me pay attention here, but I'll be fine. It's all good.
Exactly, exactly. And she said, I'm giving it to you straight because that's how you understand it. And, you know, I did go through 7 months of my active treatment, and it was much tougher than I thought it was going to be. And, you know, I often say, you know, Michelle, the first worst day I ever had was when I was told I had breast cancer. And the second worst day is when I was told I no longer had cancer, because all of a sudden I had to look up and try to walk back into my life as I thought I could, got this out of the way, let me just go back to work. And then the complications started. And before I knew it, my 7-month cancer journey turned into a near 4.5-year battle for my health and my life. And I had 9 surgeries in 3 years. And I'm proud to say that last year, 2021, was the first year I had not been operated on since 2017. And
Amen to that.
yes, hallelujah. And as you know from reading the book, if anybody can have bizarre side effects, then it's me. Right.
100%. And I'm going to ask you to tell the story because Charlene, as she mentioned, she, C-class executive, traveling, height of her career, and she definitely wanted to go back to it afterwards. So post reconstruction, you're on the road, and I will let you take it from here because you know what I want you to talk about.
Yes, I do. I do. So the first thing I have to say in starting to tell the story is I want your readers and your viewers to think about the dress. Okay, because I'd gone shopping before I went on this business trip, and I was talked into by the salesperson to buy this dress that was more expensive than I wanted to pay. I didn't even want to try it on, and I tried it on, and I was like, okay, it's a lot of money, but it's really cute, so let me just take this dress. Fast forward, I go on my business trip. I'm wearing this dress, and what's important about this dress is that it zips up in the front. I have breakfast, a business breakfast, and I noticed that my left breast is starting to swell, and that's the one that had cancer, even though I'd had a double mastectomy. And I call my doctor and I explain what's happening, and I'm in another state, of course, and he says, call the emergency room. So I said, okay, and then he says, call an ambulance. You need to go. So I'm at the hotel.
Okay, what?
Like, what the heck is happening? I called my husband from the ambulance and I said, I'm in an ambulance. The doctor said I need to go to the emergency room. I don't know what's going on. I'll call you later. Right. So,
like, I'm going to go back to taking care of business while I'm in the ambulance, like check you later.
Yeah, exactly. And so so I get to the hospital and some things just happen and I crashed actually. And it took the doctors a couple of hours to stabilize me. And I'd crashed so quickly that they didn't even have a chance to take off my dress. And all I remember in that time is in my delirium, I just kept saying, don't cut off my dress, don't cut off my dress. And so they stabilized me and they said, okay, now let's attend to your breast because it continued to swell. And the nurse says, I need you to sit up and unzip your dress. And I said, I know this sounds a little crazy, but I feel like if I unzip my dress, my breast is going to explode. And they all look at me, and that's in the emergency room, and they say, that never happens. Like, you idiot, that never happens. I said, okay. So I sat up, unzipped my dress, my breast burst open. I have never seen so much blood in my entire life. It was down the front of my dress, it was down the back of my dress, and we all stopped for a nanosecond, and I coughed, and the implant then fell out because it wasn't the implant that exploded, but the implant fell out. I'm looking at all this blood, and I said, shouldn't we do something? And I passed out right as the doctor says, get her ready for a blood transfusion. And so I ended up having a blood transfusion. By the time I woke up, they transferred me to another hospital because there wasn't a plastic surgeon at that one. And so I got a temporary surgery that the way I describe it is that when I had my dog spayed, she was sewn together better than I was after this. I mean, it was really just horrendous. And the mental trauma on top of it. Very long story shorter, I end up with a specialist at MD Anderson Cancer Center, and he tells me, he says, Charlene, whatever dress you had on saved your life. He says, because it served as the thickness of it served as a compression garment. And if you had had anything else on, you would have bled to death before you ever got to the emergency room. And it's just such a remarkable story. And my husband obviously had flown in, and I kept saying to him, I said 2 things. I said, make sure you get the breast implant. Whoops, my light just went out. I said, make sure you get the breast implant because I think I'm going to need this for some reason. I said, and can you please get my dress cleaned? And no, I know how crazy this sounds. Trust me, I know. And nobody would clean the dress. They said, this is a biohazard. There's
Yeah.
no
Did,
way
did,
we're
did
going to
someone
take
get
this
murdered in
on.
the dress?
Right. They were giving him a little bit of a funny look. And my lovely husband put the dress in water in the bathtub in the hotel while I was in the hospital, and painstakingly pulled out the blood clots of this dress. And there were a lot of them. It took him a good 3 hours. And when all was said and done with that dress, the only reminder of what happened is the tag is stained. And so that tag has become just my badge whenever I put that dress on. And it was just amazing. And I'd love to say, that's the only time I almost died during my journey, but that was just the first of several.
Well, obviously, glad that didn't happen. And
Yes.
because you have, and listeners, this isn't normal. Like this is
I
a really,
know.
really bonkers experience. So if you're, starting in your journey, this really isn't something that typically happens. But I really wanted to emphasize what you went through and how you've literally used it to strengthen yourself. Because like you say, you look at that tag and it's a badge of honor what you went through.
Oh, it so is. And it's, I am a woman of faith. And so for me, I never asked myself the questions of why me? But I ask, what am I supposed to do with this? And so I almost immediately had to just change my mind, shift my mindset to say, the lesson is coming. The lesson, is coming. And I think ultimately that's what led me to leave a life that I had spent 33 years building, and in my corporate world, and my corporate self, which I call the perfect Black female executive, right? You don't talk too loud, you don't talk too much, you don't get angry, all of those things.
It really is,
That,
unfortunately, a very
mhm.
small bucket that you're supposed to be in.
Oh,
But you obviously had to jump out of that quite a few times to make it as far as you did.
well, I did. And the one thing after my cancer journey is that I deliberately, said, I need to do something different. And it was a lot of it was certainly was driven by my health. But it was also driven by my mental state after coming out of all of this, or beginning to emerge from all of the complications and everything I had. And people don't tell you that when you recover from breast cancer or you're in remission, that you might just be depressed. And I was
Might.
very I know, I know,
I
I,
think the depression and anxiety literally is just goes hand in hand. Like the moment you get that diagnosis, your brain just
right.
shuts down.
Yeah. And it was, for me, it was crazy because no one gives you room to be depressed, right? You tell somebody you're depressed, they're like, what are you talking about? You just beat cancer. What do you have to be depressed about? And for me, it was, I had this identity for 33 years. I'm not her anymore. And I don't know who I am, right? Because I'm this type A, achieving, breaking down barriers trailblazer. And suddenly I'm not her anymore. And I don't even want to be her. So, how do I find a new way to impact, to make a difference, and to make a living? Right. And so it was a really, right now I call it a crazy time, but it was a depressing time for me. And it was very challenging. But what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, correct?
Yes. And when you're talking about this, there's a couple quotes that I wanted to read from your
Mhm.
book where you're talking about, you know, the moving forward and knowing that you had to do something else. And you kind of have it in the career aspect you're writing.
Mhm.
It says when you reach the top rung of the ladder, we have a responsibility to reach back and pull up others. Dot dot
Mhm.
dot, be the woman who makes change happen. And you did that in your career, but then you've also taken your cancer trek and done that as well, by merging those two things into your book, which we're going to get into here.
Yeah.
And I want to give the full title again. So You Are Enough, Reclaiming Your Career with Life and Life with Purpose, Passion, and Unapologetic Authenticity. So in this, you really incorporate your career and your diagnosis, but you also you pull in some of your blog posts, which you
Yes.
wrote during. What made you want to go ahead and be like, I'm going to become an author now, and I'm going to write down all of my helpful lessons? What brought that about?
Well, I didn't know that I was going to write a book. And when I made the very difficult decision to leave my job and my career, I thought, what am I supposed to do? And I literally woke up one day and said, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to write a book. And so I thought I was supposed to write a cancer book. And then I thought, wait a minute, I have so much more to say. And there's so much more that needs to be said. And I've got the courage to say it, because there's so much that goes on, whether you're a Black woman or just a woman or someone of difference climbing the ladder, in your personal life, and then also with cancer, that people just don't talk about. And I had the courage to talk about it. And so I decided to put it all in a book. And initially my publisher said, well, let's just write about being a Black woman, in corporate. And I said, no, I can't just talk about that, because if this is a memoir, I need to tell the whole picture. And he said, well, I don't know if you need to keep the cancer piece in there. Nobody's really that interested. And I said, let me figure out how to put my cancer piece in there and the blogs in there, because all of this is a mosaic that comes together to create an individual. And so, and I felt that people who are going through cancer or touched by it in some way needed to know some of these things, because people don't talk about them. Right?
It really is, because we go in and we meet our oncology team, and their concern is getting the cancer out of our bodies.
Right.
That's what they want to do. They don't talk about the different things that are going to come down the road, or the random things that may happen to you during treatment, and the depression and the anxiety. And I love the fact that in your book, you call yourself an oversharer, because that's what I call myself too. Because nothing for me, like if anyone has questions in my support groups that I do and various things at work, I'm open to anything. You want to talk about intimacy, you want to talk about depression, you want to talk about all of the things that come together with this, I'm here for it, because if it helps one person, then I feel like it's a success. And you have obviously done the same thing with your book. And we're going to talk a lot more about that after we get back from a short break. So listeners, please stay with us. If you need our help, please go to breastfriends.org and check out patient programs to see what we can do for you. If you'd like to make a donation to Breast Friends to ensure that no woman goes through cancer alone, you can do that on our website or by texting BF Radio to 41444. So stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Michelle Beck. My guest is Charlene Wheeless, speaker, coach, author of You Are Enough. And Charlene, before break, you had mentioned that in your career, you were striving to be the perfect Black female executive, and you got there. But do you feel like some of that stress, because obviously that is a high stress lifetime for 33 years, that some of that stress may have compromised your immune system and contributed to your cancer?
No, I feel like all of that stress compromised my immune system and led to my breast cancer diagnosis. And, even though I decided to go down a different path and not become a corporate executive, not be a corporate executive any longer after cancer, there are times, because that had been my identity for so long. And I did mourn the death of that life. And so there have been times that I've thought about going back into the corporate realm. And for me, Michelle, that it is so linked to cancer for me that it just mentally, it feels like a death sentence. And so I just can't get there. Unfortunately, I don't have the desire. I want to give back and impact in a different way. But, it's something I don't talk about frequently is 6 months before I had breast cancer, I had uterine cancer. And I pretty much ignored it for the most part. I mean, you can't completely ignore it. I had surgery. Went back to work a week later. I didn't tell anybody I had cancer. I just ignored it. And I guess God said, well, we're going to show you, right?
Yeah. Let's give you a different wake-up call, because the first one did not work.
Right. Clearly you're not listening. And, and so now I am such a zealot for telling people to take care of yourself. The connection between your mind and your body is direct. Right. And if you, and I know, especially for women, and we're mothers, and we tend to put everybody, ahead of ourselves. And I just like to remind people, that self-care is not the same thing as being selfish. Right. They're not the same thing. So anyway, that was a very long answer to your question.
No, well, I was actually going to ask you about that, because you talk about it in the book, how you went through the uterine cancer and it was a non-event basically, and you moved on. And then the breast cancer was such a long haul and a really hard trek for you. But then you decided, like, I'm going to tell all, because it's cathartic to write about it and to share. But you really had so many lessons to learn. And you say in there that you share, you want to be open and honest, even all the gritty parts, and you do, because it's so important for those of us who come, or for those who come after, to know, like, these are the things that you are not told by your oncology team. And if anything that you went through can help others, I think that's so important. So thank you.
Yeah,
and one thing you talk about in the book, which is trying to get back to our normal lives, which is hilarious. And then people say, oh, well, you have a new normal. And I love your quote about, this is from one of your blog posts. So people would tell me that I just had to get used to the new normal. Fuck that. I wanted my old normal back. And by the way, I still wanted symmetrical boobs. But that's so true.
Yeah. Well, because, I mean, and I still feel that way. Fuck normal, right? Fuck the new normal, right? I wanted my old life back. I wanted to walk back into the life I had put my blood, sweat, and tears in. And I had great boobs before I had cancer, and I don't think that people really understand, I had a double mastectomy, and I've had reconstruction, and all that's in the book. But, I feel like these are somebody else's parts now.
Yes.
They're not really mine. And I tell people sometimes, it's like, just imagine, you wake up and you don't have your original equipment anymore, and that is, so you just so desperately want to get back to who you're going to be. And I don't think that you can move forward until you realize you're not going to be that person again. And you have a choice. You can be a better version of that or not. But you have a choice.
Okay, this is making me go back to another one of your quotes.
I love that you're flipping through my book. I have to tell you, I love that.
Yeah, well, this is my favorite part of what I do, because it's just, even though everyone should be reading the book, not everyone will, but you get amazing things like this. So when you're talking about, when someone asks, like, what's wrong with you? You're like, what is wrong with me is that I had cancer. What is wrong is that cancer has taken more from me than it's given. What is wrong is that I wonder every day if one day I will be a partner in the partner abandonment club. Side note, way too many men leave their wives after breast cancer surgery. So screw them. Actually, they don't deserve the fabulous women that they were with. But what is wrong is that I spend any time having these thoughts at all. It's not rational, but neither is the disease that you never can quite get away from.
Yes.
Just got to take a breath after that one.
I remember writing that, and I remember how I felt when I wrote that. And, people, and I guess unless you've gone through something, you can have compassion, but you can't really empathize, and so often people were like, when are you going to be you again? I miss the you that you used to be. And I wanted to say, well, damn it, don't you think I miss her too? Don't you think I'm trying to get to be her too? And oh my gosh, and I remember, and I believe I say this in the book, that at one point, you know, I just wanted to die. I just didn't want to die from cancer because I just didn't see a way out. And I couldn't see that new life ahead of me. And now I just want people to know that new life can be so amazing and so much more than you ever imagined. And that's not to say that I don't miss parts of my old life, because I do. I loved being a badass, right?
Mhm. You're
I'm just a
still a
badass.
badass. You
Yeah,
just do
I'm
it
just a
differently
badass,
now.
right, in a different way. But what I do now fills my heart every day. What I used to do filled me with dread.
Yep.
And so that's the great part, if you're going to have a great part on the other side.
It really is. My guest last week, his name is Savio Clemente, and he has his website is The Human Resolve, but he talks about finding your why. How do we
Mhm.
find our why? What makes us move
Right.
forward after a cancer diagnosis? And for you,
Mhm.
obviously, it is you became the coach, the leadership coach, and to
Mhm.
remind women, especially, I'm sure you are enough.
Yes.
And
Yes.
obviously the title of your book somewhat wrote
Mhm.
itself, I imagine. But I
Right.
kind of want to dig into something that
Sure.
is um as a middle class white woman who's very fortunate, who went through a
Mhm.
cancer diagnosis. My journey was fairly easy, but
Mhm.
hopefully people do know, because it needs more awareness, that the Black and color community is incredibly underserved in dealing
Yes.
with healthcare in general, but especially
Mhm.
through a cancer diagnosis. Did you have experience like that?
I'm fortunate, having been, an executive. I had access to great healthcare. I'm a geek researcher, so I always looked to see everything that was out there. But there were times where I was hesitant to advocate for myself, and I realized if I didn't advocate for myself, that I may not get the care that I needed. One of the statistics that people may not know about Black women in breast cancer, other than the fact that we die at, I think, a 41%
Mhm.
rate, which is much higher than white women, is that we're often slow, or we may not get the option of surgery or chemotherapy. I read this after I'd gone through surgery and chemotherapy. And I recall that initially, because of my complications, I had to change my care team. I remember my original care team, when it came to chemotherapy, they gave me the option. They said, you can have chemotherapy, or really, it's probably not going to make that much difference, right?
What the
And
hell?
right. And I thought, oh, I was vain enough to think, oh, well, I won't lose my hair. I won't, I went to
Right.
all the vanity things, right? And then I thought, wait a minute. It was bad enough that you cut off both my breasts, but chemotherapy is an option, and it's not required. So I called again my new care team, because I was in the process of switching a bit there, at MD Anderson. And there, the breast care specialist, said,
Mhm.
this is the standard of care. This is what we recommend. So I don't know why anyone is telling you that you have the option. And I really thought about that for a while, not about whether or not to have chemotherapy. That was a resounding yes.
Mhm.
But no one else that I've known who've had breast cancer, who's white, has ever been told that that chemotherapy was optional.
Mm.
And that really struck me. And I would say the other place where it's a bit more subtle, but there's this trope, or this belief out there, that Black women, we are strong, we can withstand more pain, and we can withstand more suffering. And it's a trope that's been around for a very long time, but it does play out in the medical field, regarding what kinds of drugs you get to take care of your pain, right? And I know that we have a
Because if you're that
horrible,
strong, you don't need as many
you know,
drugs.
and that's the belief. Or you tell the doctor that you are in excruciating pain, and they don't necessarily believe you. And I remember distinctly at one point, getting, like, being told to take Tylenol when I really needed hydrocodone. And I was in excruciating pain. And my husband happens to be white, and he called the doctor and just made some demands. And next thing I know, I have all the drugs that I need. So I'm not so naive to think that just because I'm a Black woman who is successful, and had means, that I was able to escape, some of the tropes and some of the biases that are there. But I was still lucky. There are
Yeah.
women who don't have access to care. And if there isn't someone who advocates or champions for them, their road is the path to death.
Well, it
And
is. And because unfortunately, as you mentioned earlier, they're based on too many awful things in our country, the systemic racism, that people of color do not have the same basic access to healthcare
yeah,
that the rest of us do. And quite often, if something is going on, they're ignoring it because they're working two jobs, taking care of their
exactly.
single family households. And unfortunately, because of that, they're diagnosed at later stages, and it is more aggressive because it's not being taken care of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also I think, it's we are all nervous when we go to the doctor, and we're all a little bit intimidated, when we go to the doctor. And, if you feel like you aren't going to be treated well anyway, then it's easier to just not go.
Yeah.
Right. And then you end up realizing that you've got something really serious wrong with you, and it's now too late. And that is just such a tragedy. I'm thankful that there are, studies out now more and more that are looking at the subgroups within breast cancer. Are you Latina? Are you Black? Are you, the different subgroups, which I think is really important. Um, but health equity is it's a problem that we're going to be trying to solve for a very long time.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of throwing this out there, different studies.
Mhm.
There is something called the Wisdom Study, which is going on right now. It's based out in San Francisco with Dr. Laura Esserman. And they're literally doing swab tests on women who have not been diagnosed, to check out their genetic risk. And they're really looking to get more women of color in this study
Mhm.
so they can have better recommendations. So any of you out there who have not been diagnosed, please go to the Wisdom Study, I believe it's .org, and check it out, because it will help everyone overall. But for me, trying to get more research, more things out there for anyone who is less has less healthcare available, please
Mhm.
do that, because it will
Mhm.
help. So that's okay.
Great.
Things happen on live podcasts. It's okay.
They do. They do. Thank you.
One day, I'm
Thank
sure my
you.
dogs are going to bust in here. The day hasn't happened yet, but I think it will.
Oh, mine do all the time. If we were home in my regular studio, you would see them because they always want to make a cameo.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually it's my son, and I put like a red light on the door, like, stay out, stay out.
Right.
So we're in a couple minutes. We want to take a break, but really
Mhm.
quickly, I want to kind of hit on something that we talked about earlier about the word survivor,
Yes.
because I know that is a sensitive word for a lot of people. And you had mentioned you use the word warrior, and that's actually what
Mhm.
we use at Breast Friends. We call
Oh.
our ladies warrior women. How do you feel
Mhm.
about the term survivor?
Yeah, I quite frankly, Michelle, I just don't get it because I know a lot of survivors who are dead. And it's really as simple as that. And so for me, you're a cancer warrior, you fought the good fight, but I just don't feel that I can call myself a survivor because next year I might not be,
Sure. It's the gift that
right?
keeps on giving.
Oh, absolutely. Just a couple of days ago, I scheduled my 6-month checkup with my
Mhm.
oncologist, and that sits with you, right? Until that appointment happens. And it's like Survivor just doesn't feel authentic to me.
I can definitely relate to that. I'm at my 5-year mark, and my doctor's like, I'll see you in a year. I'm like, no, you'll see me in 6 months,
Right,
because
right.
I'm just not ready to do that break.
Hmm.
Like, I need someone who's going to
Right.
keep checking on me and listening to the various aches and pains that I have, and telling me like, oh, well, that might be this or that might be that. And,
Right.
so really you can say it like, I'm no evidence of disease. you know,
Right.
that's kind of where I'm at right now. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. So,
Yeah. Plus, I don't like pink either.
well, it's funny.
Yeah.
If you saw my desk after my
Mhm.
second time around, I did kind of embrace the pink, and
Mhm.
not because like I'm into the hoopla, but for
Mhm.
me, it kind of connects me to my grandmother who
Oh,
passed.
that's sweet.
And
Mhm.
I'm not going to lie, I have a pink ribbon tattoo with boxing gloves on
Mhm.
it and the word
Oh,
strong,
oh, that's
because
great.
for me, especially doing what I do now,
Mhm.
I feel like it kind of bolsters me up to connect me
Mhm.
to this amazing club that I never wanted to be a member of, but it
Yes.
really has the best members.
I would
So
agree with you on
yeah.
that one.
So that's going to be
Absolutely.
the title of my own book, because I am working on it.
Mhm.
But you know how hard it is to get it out there when you have a busy life.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we are going to take
Uh,
another quick break, listeners. Please stay with us. When we come back, we will dig into more with Charlene. But if you would like to be my guest or submit your warrior story to me, please email me at michellebeck@breastfriends.org. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Michelle Beck, and my guest is Charlene Wheeless, breast cancer warrior and woman of many talents. So, Charlene, we've been talking about the changes in your life and
Mhm.
different things, but you know, you wanted your old normal back, and to you know,
Mhm.
you missed that girl, but you've obviously reclaimed your life and turned it into something different. And how did you
Mhm.
do that? And do you feel like cancer taught you anything in this process?
Mhm. I yes and no. I mean, I reclaimed my life, one because I had to, and the other because I really needed to in order to move forward. You know, one of the things I say in my book is that, you know, in order to move forward, I had to forgive myself for getting cancer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people often ask me, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, I chose to lead that hard charging life. And, you know, and I do believe it contributed to my cancer. And there was a part of me that was still holding on to the fact that I felt that I contributed to it. So I had to let go of that in order to be able to move forward. And I think one of the things that have come out of this, come out of the cancer journey, and even where I am now, is I'm very focused on impact. I am very focused on intentionality, where and how I spend my time. And you know, I have three mantras in life now that I use all the time, or maybe four. But you know, the first one, and you talked about it earlier, and it's the title of my book, is "You are enough." You know, and going through the cancer battle and coming out the other end, I realized in my career, I had been, and in my life as a little Black girl growing up, I'd always been told or made to feel like I wasn't enough. And what I discovered at the end of my cancer battle or my journey and coming out the other side is that I was always enough. We're all enough. We have everything we need. We are exactly who we need to be. And so that's one that's really important to me. The other is it's choice, not chance, that changes your life. And often we just feel stuck, you know, and one of the greatest gifts we have is choice. And I learned that through cancer. And the other piece, which gets a little bit more to your question, is I have this saying that I actually put to use, and that is 7 seconds of courage. And I think that with 7 seconds of courage, you can do anything, because it's enough time to think about it, but not enough time to talk yourself out of it.
And
Right.
did you come
And
up with that one, or did you get that from someone else?
I came up with it
Okay.
actually. So I remember seeing a movie a long time ago of We Bought a Zoo
Oh,
with
love that
Matt
movie.
Damon.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I know. And he talks about something like a certain amount of time of insane courage. And so that led me to think, I didn't even think about it again until after my cancer journey. And I thought, you know, when I've come down to really big decisions in my life, like leaving my high paying job and other things, how long did it really take me to make the decision, right? And I pretty much narrowed it down to 7 seconds. And then I started doing some research on it, and I found some neuroscientists who actually said, Your 6 seconds, the first 6 seconds are emotion, but that seventh second, excuse me, is where the magic happens. And so for me, with 7 seconds of courage, you can transform your life. And I know that it's true because I did it.
I love that. That's really
Mhm.
is incredibly impactful. I do want to jump back to
Mhm.
one of your first one, the You Are Enough. And you
Mhm.
talked about growing up and you never
Yes.
thought you were enough. And in the book, you actually referenced that as being invisible. Can we talk about
Yes.
that a little bit?
Absolutely. I grew up in Oakland, California. I was born in 1964. And, in 1964 in Oakland, California, as a little black girl, you were either invisible or you're prey. I happen to have been both. And I realized I grew up into an abusive home. And when I was 7, my mother divorced my father and she took me with her. And, I realized that I was invisible, that people saw my skin color before they ever saw me. And I had to figure out a way to be seen. For me, that came about by being a cheerleader for most of my life, because when you put that uniform on, nobody cares what color you are.
Mhm.
But when I went into the workforce, I didn't have a cheerleader uniform on anymore. And I realized that once again, I was invisible. And, you fight so hard to be heard. But again, going back to some of those tropes, if you're a Black woman, don't be too passionate because you're the angry Black woman in the room. Don't say you think you're discriminated against because you're the person who says everything is about race. Right. And so it was just this constant battle to be heard and to be seen. And I decided along the way, I'm going to learn your rules of how this works, of how to be an executive. But by golly, I'm going to be seen and I'm going to make sure other people are seen too. And I'm going to make sure they're heard, not because I'm going to talk for them, but because I'm going to open the path so that they can speak for themselves. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of resilience, and probably just a lot of being really stubborn. you know, to make that happen. But that is something that was important to me personally for my own growth. But as I grew into my career and now into this next phase of my life, it's important for me to help other people no longer feel invisible. And when I'm in a room and I look around, I don't think about who's in the room. I think about who isn't in the room.
Mm. Who
Right.
can we bring in to join us in
Right.
this space?
Right. Let's ask the question. And I've done a lot of work. I've worked with many large, companies, multinationals, and everybody's worried about diversity. But it's a bunch of white guys sitting around a table saying, "What are we going to do about diversity?" I'm
Mhm.
thinking, are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? So I just really try to do my part to make sure that people have an opportunity to be heard.
I appreciate that. And I do have hopes for our VP Harrison going forward. So
Yes,
let's actually
yes.
change the color of this country a little bit
Hmm.
in
Well,
in
it's
the
it's yeah, it's going to change anyway.
in the
We,
leadership
yeah,
roles,
right.
because it's
Yes,
not just white men who should be making these decisions.
right.
It's honestly, I think they are they're a much smaller population,
Hmm.
and they need to keep their bands off our bodies for one thing, but there's so many things going on right now. That's
Right.
many other episodes.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Right. But oh no, that's okay. But I tell CEOs now, I said one of the things you need to think about is that, while you're surrounded by people who are just like you are making decisions about a business for people who don't exist. In 10 years, that group of people will not look like they do today. So if you're still making the same decisions, good luck with your business.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah,
it just
sorry.
is so no, it's just like so profound. I was like, okay.
I have lots of opinions, as you can tell.
I appreciate that. And I'm kind of going to jump back into something that I really appreciated from the book, is when you're talking about the fear of going through your cancer trek. And someone mentioned that word to me recently, that it's a trek, because that sounds a lot harder than a journey. A journey sounds fun. That. And I'm like, yeah, it's a trek. It is hard. But how did you figure out how to kind of put that fear behind you and focus on your purpose?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if I ever put the fear behind me, but I just let my purpose become stronger than my fear. And I was really driven, as I'd mentioned earlier, that I really believe to the core of my being that if something negative, something bad happens to you, you have to turn it into something positive for other people. And that really became my purpose. And that's why I speak so open and so freely about cancer and about my trek. I really like that term, by the way. My trek. And so is the fear still there? Absolutely. Every time I nick myself or something happens or I don't feel well and I think, oh my gosh, my cancer is back. Or there are times when people say, Charlene, there's an awful lot about you and your life out there, because I wrote the book. Aren't you worried that maybe people won't hire you or this or that? It's like, you know what? I'm focused on my purpose. And every single day, my purpose is greater than my fear. Doesn't mean I'm not scared. It just means I'm driven.
And you talk about that in your book, the purpose and the driven, and how this has made you feel like you're living more authentically now.
Absolutely. And when you are a person of difference, and that even includes someone who has been sick, in the workplace, you always, I always felt like, people talk about you can't bring your whole self to work or to something. It's not even just that, it's that you can't bring your authentic self. And I decided, after going through this trek and coming out on the other end, I was going to be unapologetically authentic. And I have this whole website. I don't know if you know this. I have a website it's a store for merchandise. It's called Unapologetic AF. and on it, I sell merchandise. That I have T-shirts that say "Unapologetic AF," and I have things that say "I am enough."
Oh my God, I'm going
enough.
there as soon as we're done.
Yeah. It's unapologeticaf.store. But it's because I just wanted to shout from the rooftops, and I want everybody else to, that they can be unapologetically, authentically them. And it is great. It's not something that you have to worry about.
It's funny because cancer somewhat did the same thing to me. I had gone to after I found Breast Friends, I went to a luncheon. They had an educational session, and in there it was about taming your fears. And if you had no fears, no restrictions, what would you want to be doing? And literally I had tears running down my face, and I'm like, I want to write a book and I want to be on stage. And I was like, where the hell did that come from? But in these few years, I'm working towards it. I've done speaking events, and that's my ultimate goal and I'll get there. COVID just threw everything into chaos, as we know.
Boy, that's for sure.
But I never would have thought this is what I want to do. And it's funny now because I consider myself a lot in many ways. I love to talk. I tend to dominate conversations. I'm an oversharer. I'm a Leo. It just comes with the territory. But this is who I am now. Right. And cancer has turned me into that person.
Yeah. Well, the only thing better than being enough is being more than enough. Right.
That is perfect. Gosh, we are almost out of time. What in your last minute, what is up next for you?
I am just like you. I'm looking forward to taking on the big stages and talking about my journey and helping people find their way back to themselves and make those choices. I have coming up a TEDx talk in a couple of months that I am very excited about. And then just continuing on my journey to help people with cancer, to help leaders. And, a lot of coaches focus just on coaching. I focus on the whole person. I look at the leader, but the whole person. And it's just been living the best life that I can and leaving a legacy of impact.
Perfect. Well, Charlene, thank you so much for being here today. Listeners, you can find out more about Charlene at charlenewheeless.biz. On LinkedIn, she's Charlene Wheeless, and Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Do you go, is it Char Wheeless?
Yeah,
CHAR? Okay.
it's Char Wheeless.
Char, perfect. And obviously unapologeticaf.store. So go
Yes,
there.
absolutely. If you go nowhere else, go there.
Go there. And also the book can be found on Amazon and Audible and all those places. So please definitely go check it out. So listeners, if you or a loved one need our services, please visit breastfriends.org. You can make a donation on our website or by texting BF Radio to 41444 to help ensure women do not go through cancer alone. You can find this podcast on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch our 2022 episodes on the Breast Friends YouTube channel. If you would like to nominate yourself to be my guest or share your story, please email me at michellebeck@breastfriends.org. We'll be back next week. And until then, remember, we rise by lifting each other.